In the burning heart of the Arizona desert, a fearless cowgirl faces ruin, until an Apache warrior appears and changes everything. But the true cost of her salvation will be higher than gold, and deeper than she ever imagined. Thank you so much for watching, and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story, and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The Arizona Territory, 1885. The unforgiving summer sun beat down on Catherine Kate Wilson's ranch like a hammer on an anvil. At 32, she was one of the few female ranchers in the territory, having inherited the Singing River Ranch from her late father 3 years prior. The drought had stretched on for months now, turning the once green pastures into a sea of dusty brown. Cattle were dying, and water sources were dwindling at an alarming rate. Kate stood on her porch, her weathered hat pulled low over her honey-colored hair, squinting at the horizon. The property that had once been her pride and joy was now a source of constant worry. She had already let go of most of her hands, keeping only Miguel, an old Mexican cowboy who had worked for her father for decades, and young Jimmy, a freckle-faced boy of 17 who needed the work to help support his widowed mother. "Miss Kate," Miguel called as he rode up to the house, dust billowing around his horse. "The North Creek has dried up completely. We've lost 3 more head." Kate's heart sank. "That's the 3rd water source this month. At this rate, we won't make it to fall." "There's talk in town," Miguel said hesitantly, removing his hat. "They say Harlan Crawford is buying up all the drought-stricken ranches for pennies on the dollar." Kate's jaw tightened. Harlan Crawford, the territory's wealthiest cattle baron, had been eyeing her land for years. Her father had refused to sell to him, despite his increasing offers, and now he was circling like a vulture, waiting for her to fail. "I'll die before I sell to that man," Kate said firmly. Later that evening, as Kate pored over her account books by lamplight, the numbers stared back at her bleakly. She was 3 months behind on her bank payments, and her savings were nearly depleted. A knock at the door startled her from her grim calculations. "Come in," she called, expecting Miguel with his nightly report. Instead, Sheriff Tom Bradley entered, his expression somber beneath his thick mustache. "Evening, Kate. Wish I was bringing better news." "What is it, Tom?" "Crawford's men have been diverting water from the Western Creek, the one that feeds into your property." Kate stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the wooden floor. "That creek runs across both our lands. He can't just dam it up." "Technically, the source is on his property," Tom said, shifting uncomfortably. "It's a legal gray area, and Crawford knows it." "So he's going to dry me out," Kate said bitterly. "I've spoken to the county judge, but Crawford's got him in his pocket. I'm afraid there's not much I can do officially." After the sheriff left, Kate sat in the darkness of her cabin, tears of frustration threatening to spill. Her father had built this ranch with his bare hands, and she had promised him on his deathbed that she would keep it going. Now it seemed that promise would be impossible to keep. The next morning, Kate rode out at dawn to inspect the Western Creek. Sure enough, Crawford's men had constructed a crude dam, diverting the water to his own reservoirs. As she dismounted to examine it more closely, a movement in the brush caught her eye. Kate's hand moved instinctively to the revolver at her hip. "Show yourself," she called, her voice steady despite her racing heart. A tall figure emerged from the shadows. He was unmistakably Apache, with long black hair and copper skin. He wore a mixture of traditional clothing and items clearly traded from white settlers. A cotton shirt beneath a leather vest adorned with tribal beadwork. "You're on private property," Kate said, her hand still on her gun. "As are you," the man replied in perfect English, his deep voice carrying a slight accent. "This is ancestral Apache land." Kate studied him warily. Relations with the local Apache tribes had been tense for years, though things had calmed somewhat since most had been relocated to reservations. "I'm Kate Wilson. This ranch belongs to me." "I am Nakohe," he replied. "It means warrior. At least that is what your people call me." "What are you doing here?" "Watching," Nakohe said simply, gesturing toward the dam. "The man who blocks the water also threatens my people's hunting grounds to the south. He builds fences where there should be none." Kate considered this information. Crawford's expansion was affecting more than just her ranch. "Do your people plan to fight him?" she asked cautiously. Nakohe's expression darkened. There has been too much blood. My chief seeks peace, but this man, he understands only power and money. An idea began to form in Kate's mind. A desperate one, perhaps, but she was running out of options. What if we work together? She suggested. Your knowledge of the land, my legal claim to the property. We might find a way to stop Crawford. Nakoe studied her for a long moment, his dark eyes unreadable. Why would I trust a white woman? Because we have a common enemy, Kate replied simply. And because I've never broken my word. After a long moment, Nakoe nodded slowly. I will consider your offer. Meet me here tomorrow at sunrise. I will give you my answer. As Kate rode back to her ranch, her mind raced with possibilities. Aligning with an Apache warrior was risky. The townspeople would talk, and Crawford would use it against her. But something about Nakoe's quiet dignity and obvious intelligence gave her hope. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of possibility that she might save her father's legacy. That night, as she sat on her porch watching the stars emerge in the vast Arizona sky, Kate realized she was no longer thinking only about saving her ranch. She was thinking about the tall Apache warrior with the penetrating gaze, and wondering what his answer would be when the sun rose over the parched landscape tomorrow. You're being foolish, Kate Wilson, she muttered to herself. Yet she couldn't deny the strange connection she had felt when looking into Nakoe's eyes, as if they were two people from different worlds, united by something larger than themselves. Tomorrow would bring his answer, and with it, perhaps, a new path forward through this unforgiving land. Dawn broke over the eastern hills, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold as Kate rode toward the meeting place. She had barely slept, her mind filled with doubts and possibilities. As she approached the creek, she saw Nakoe already waiting, sitting cross-legged on a large rock seemingly deep in meditation. He opened his eyes as she dismounted, acknowledging her with a slight nod. I have considered your words, Kate Wilson. And? She asked, trying to keep the eagerness from her voice. I will help you, he said, rising to his feet in one fluid motion. But not only for your sake. The waters that feed your land also sustain wildlife that my people hunt. If Crawford claims more territory, more of my people will starve on the reservation. Kate let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Thank you. I don't know what your help will look like, but I'm grateful. First, we must understand our enemy better, Nakoe said. What do you know of this man Crawford? Kate leaned against a boulder, crossing her arms. He came to the territory about 15 years ago with money from back east. Built the biggest cattle operation in 3 counties. He's ruthless in business but careful to maintain a respectable image in town. Donates to the church, hosts dances, courted the banker's widow until she passed. Nakoe listened intently. A man who wears 2 faces. These are often the most dangerous. He's been trying to buy my ranch since my father was alive, Kate continued. Keeps raising his offers, but I know once he has the water rights, he'll control the whole valley. Water is life, Nakoe said solemnly. My people have known this truth for generations. Your Crawford sees it as power to be owned. For the next hour, they formulated a plan. Nakoe knew of hidden springs in the foothills that could potentially be channeled to Kate's ranch. He also had observed Crawford's operations extensively and knew the routines of his men. We should begin tonight, Nakoe suggested. Under darkness, I will show you the springs. But first, I must speak with my chief. He should know of our alliance. Kate nodded, suddenly realizing the risk Nakoe was taking. Your people won't object to you helping me? A shadow crossed Nakoe's face. Some will. I walk between 2 worlds, Kate Wilson. My mother was Apache, my father a Mexican trader. I was educated at a mission school before returning to my mother's people. I am not fully trusted by either world. Kate felt a surge of understanding. As a female rancher, she too existed in a space where she didn't quite belong. Meet me here at moonrise, Nakoe said, turning to leave. Bring tools for digging. That afternoon, Kate rode into town for supplies. As she tied her horse outside the general store, she noticed whispers and stares following her. News traveled fast in small towns. Inside, the storekeeper, Mr. Peterson, greeted her with forced politeness. Miss Wilson, what can I help you with today? I need some shovels, Mr. Peterson. The good steel ones. As he wrapped her purchases, he cleared his throat nervously. "Miss Wilson, there's been talk about you being seen with an Indian near your property." Kate's expression remained neutral. "Is it a crime to speak with the native people of this land, Mr. Peterson?" "No, ma'am, but, well, folks are concerned, especially with your situation being what it is." "And what situation would that be?" Kate asked coldly. Peterson flushed. "Just that, with the drought and all, some feel it might be better if you considered Mr. Crawford's offer, for your own security." "I appreciate the concern," Kate said, placing her money on the counter. "But my ranch is not for sale." As she turned to leave, she nearly collided with Harlan Crawford himself, a tall man in an expensive suit, his silver hair and beard meticulously groomed. "Miss Wilson," he said, tipping his hat with exaggerated courtesy. "What a pleasant surprise." "Mr. Crawford," Kate acknowledged stiffly. "I hope you'll reconsider my offer," he said, his smile not reaching his cold blue eyes. "I've increased it by another $500. Very generous considering the condition of your stock." "My answer remains the same." Crawford's smile tightened. "I admire your spirit, Miss Wilson, but this drought won't end any time soon. And I hear you've been entertaining unusual company. The townspeople have long memories about the Apache troubles." Kate felt anger rising in her chest but kept her voice level. "Are you threatening me, Mr. Crawford?" "Merely expressing concern for a neighbor," he replied smoothly. "A woman alone in these parts faces many dangers." Kate lifted her chin defiantly. "Good day, Mr. Crawford." As she rode back to her ranch, Kate's mind was racing. Crawford clearly knew about her meeting with Nakohe, which meant he had eyes watching her property. She would need to be more careful. That night, under a bright moon, Kate slipped away from the ranch house with tools loaded on her most reliable mare. Miguel had given her a questioning look when she prepared the horse but asked no questions. Nakohe was waiting at the creek, a shadow among shadows. Without a word, he led her through winding trails into the foothills, traveling for nearly an hour before stopping in a secluded canyon. "Listen," he said softly. Kate strained her ears and heard it, the gentle bubbling of water. Nakohe led her to a small spring emerging from between rocks, creating a modest but steady flow. "This is one of several springs that my people have kept secret," he explained. "With work, we can redirect this water to feed your eastern pastures." For the next several nights, they worked under moonlight, digging channels and clearing paths for the water. During the day, Kate maintained her normal routine, though she noticed riders watching her property from a distance. Crawford's men, no doubt. One evening, as they took a break from their labor, Kate offered Nakohe a canteen of water. Their fingers brushed as he accepted it, sending an unexpected warmth through her hand. "Why did you never marry?" Nakohe asked unexpectedly. "Your people place great importance on this." Kate was surprised by the personal question but found herself answering honestly. "I was engaged once, to a man from California. He couldn't understand why I wanted to stay and run my father's ranch instead of moving to San Francisco with him." Nakohe nodded thoughtfully. "You chose your land over your heart." "No," Kate said after a moment. "I chose my heart. This ranch is part of who I am. My people believe that the land and the self cannot be separated," Nakohe said. "Perhaps you are more Apache than you know, Kate Wilson." Kate smiled at that, feeling a connection with this man that transcended their different backgrounds. "What about you? Do you have a wife waiting for you?" Nakohe's expression grew distant. "I was to marry the chief's daughter, but when I returned from the white man's school, speaking English and knowing their ways, her father decided I was too changed, too dangerous to lead after him." "I'm sorry," Kate said softly. "It was many seasons ago," Nakohe replied. "The pain has faded." As they resumed their work, Kate found herself watching Nakohe's strong, capable hands as he moved rocks and dug channels. She noticed the grace with which he moved, the quiet confidence in his actions. Without meaning to, she was beginning to see him not as an Apache warrior or a potential ally, but as a man, one who understood her in ways few others had. By the end of the week, they had successfully diverted enough water to begin replenishing Kate's eastern pasture. It wasn't enough to save the entire ranch, but it was a start, a small victory against Crawford's attempts to drive her out. As they stood watching the water flow into her land for the first time, Kate impulsively reached out and squeezed Nakohe's hand. "Thank you. I couldn't have done this without you." Nakohe didn't pull away. Instead, he turned to face her, his dark eyes searching hers. "There is still much to be done, Kate Wilson." "I know," she replied, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. "But for the first time in months, I have hope." As they made their way back to their horses, a gunshot shattered the night's silence. Kate felt something whiz past her ear as Nakohe roughly pulled her down behind a boulder. "Crawford's men," he whispered, his body tense as another shot rang out. Kate's heart pounded as she realized how much danger they were in, and how much more complicated their alliance had just become. "Stay down," Nakohe commanded, his voice barely audible as more shots pierced the darkness. Kate pressed herself against the earth, the smell of dust and sage filling her nostrils as adrenaline coursed through her veins. Nakohe moved with remarkable stealth, disappearing into the shadows so quickly she momentarily thought he had abandoned her. "We need to get to the horses," Kate whispered when he returned to her side moments later. Nakohe shook his head. "3 men. They're between us and the horses." "Crawford's men?" "Yes. They wear his brand." Nakohe's face was grim in the moonlight. "They were waiting. Someone told them we would be here." Kate's mind raced. Who could have known? Miguel and Jimmy were the only ones who might have suspected her nighttime activities, and she trusted them with her life. Another shot rang out, closer this time, splintering bark from a tree near their position. "I'll draw them away," Nakohe decided. "When they follow, run to your horse and ride hard for your ranch." "I'm not leaving you," Kate protested. "This is not the time for pride," Nakohe said sharply. "Your death helps no one." Before she could argue further, he slipped away, moving like a shadow through the brush. Moments later, Kate heard a sound from the opposite direction, a perfect imitation of a coyote's howl. The shots paused, then redirected toward the sound. Kate seized her opportunity, crouching low as she ran toward where they had left the horses. She had nearly reached them when a figure loomed before her in the darkness. "Well, well, Miss Wilson playing with savages in the night," drawled a familiar voice. Kate froze. It was Jed Hawkins, Crawford's foreman. He leveled his rifle at her chest, his weathered face twisted in a cruel smile. "Mr. Crawford will be mighty interested to hear about your little water-stealing operation," Hawkins continued, "though he might be more interested in why the high and mighty Miss Wilson is sneaking around with an Apache." "Get off my land, Hawkins," Kate said, her hand inching toward the revolver at her hip. Hawkins laughed. "This ain't your land, lady. Not for long, anyway." A whistling sound cut through the air, and Hawkins suddenly staggered, dropping his rifle as he clutched at the arrow protruding from his shoulder. Kate didn't hesitate. She drew her revolver and fired a warning shot into the air. "The next one won't miss," she warned, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Nakohe appeared beside her, another arrow nocked and ready. "Your men should leave now," he called out to Hawkins, who was on his knees, groaning in pain. "Tell Crawford that this water flows as it should, as it always has." The other 2 men emerged from the brush, their hands raised. "Take him and go," Kate ordered, "and tell Crawford that if he sends men onto my property again, I won't be firing warning shots." After Crawford's men had retreated, taking the wounded Hawkins with them, Kate turned to Nakohe. "You saved my life, and you stood your ground," he replied, respect evident in his voice. "Crawford will not give up so easily, though." "No," Kate agreed. "This is just the beginning." The following morning, Kate rode into town, determination setting her jaw. She tied her horse outside the sheriff's office and strode inside, finding Tom Bradley at his desk. "I need to file a complaint," she announced. "Crawford's men trespassed on my property last night and fired shots at me." Sheriff Bradley sighed, setting down his coffee. "Kate, you know how this works. It'll be your word against theirs." "So, you'll do nothing?" Kate demanded. "Did you have witnesses?" Kate hesitated, knowing that mentioning Nakohe would only complicate matters. "That's what I thought," Bradley said. "Kate, I've known you since you were knee-high. I'm telling you as a friend, you can't win against Crawford. Not like this." "Watch me," Kate replied, turning to leave. Her next stop was the bank, where Mr. Fulton, the manager, received her with obvious discomfort. "Miss Wilson, I was about to send you a letter," he began, adjusting his spectacles nervously. "Regarding your loan." "I'm aware I'm behind on payments," Kate said. "I've come to ask for an extension." Fulton cleared his throat. "I'm afraid that won't be possible. In fact, the bank is calling in the full amount of the loan. Immediately." Kate stared at him in disbelief. "That's impossible. The terms clearly state." "There's a clause regarding proper management of the collateral," Fulton interrupted. "The drought has significantly devalued the property, and reports of unusual activities have raised concerns about your stewardship." "Crawford's behind this," Kate said flatly. "He's on your board of directors, isn't he?" Fulton didn't deny it. "You have 30 days to repay the loan in full, or the ranch will be foreclosed upon." Kate left the bank, her thoughts tumultuous. Crawford was tightening the noose, using his influence to cut off all her options. As she untied her horse, she noticed people on the street giving her a wide berth, whispers following in her wake. That evening, as Kate sat on her porch contemplating her dwindling options, she was surprised to see Nakohe approaching openly, in broad daylight. He led his horse up to the house, seemingly unconcerned about being seen. "You shouldn't be here," Kate said, though she couldn't deny the flutter of pleasure at seeing him. "Crawford's probably having my ranch watched." "Let them watch," Nakohe replied. "I bring news. Crawford's men are building a larger dam further upstream. They work day and night. Soon not even our diverted springs will be enough." Kate's shoulders sagged. "The bank is foreclosing on my loan. Crawford's making sure I have nowhere to turn." Nakohe was silent for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "There may be another way. My people have observed Crawford's operations for many seasons. We know something that might change your fortunes." "What do you mean?" "Gold," Nakohe said simply. "There is a small deposit on the northern edge of your property. My grandfather showed it to me as a boy, warning that it should remain hidden from white men's eyes." Kate's eyes widened. "Are you certain?" "I can show you tomorrow. It is not a large deposit, but perhaps enough to pay your bank." Hope surged within Kate, but was quickly tempered by suspicion. "Why would you tell me this? Your people have kept it secret all this time." Nakohe's gaze was steady, intense. "Because I have come to believe that you see the land as more than something to own or exploit. You belong to it, as my people do." Kate felt a warmth spreading through her chest at his words. "I don't know what to say." "Say nothing. Just listen," Nakohe replied, stepping closer. "There is something else you should know. Crawford's men did not find us by accident last night. There is a traitor." Kate frowned. "Who?" "The young one. Jimmy. I saw him meet with Crawford's foreman in town yesterday." The revelation hit Kate like a physical blow. Jimmy, the boy she had helped support through his mother's illness, had betrayed her. "I need to confront him," she said, rising. "He's not at the ranch," Nakohe told her. "I watched him ride toward Crawford's property an hour ago." Kate paced the porch, her mind racing. "If there's truly gold on my property, I could save the ranch, but Crawford will stop at nothing once he knows." "Which is why we must act quickly and secretly," Nakohe agreed. "I will help you extract enough to satisfy your bank. The rest should remain hidden." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and purple, Kate made a decision. "Stay for supper," she said impulsively. "Miguel makes the best chili north of the Mexican border." Nakohe hesitated, then nodded. "I would be honored." That evening, as they sat at Kate's simple kitchen table with Miguel, the old cowhand showed no surprise or judgment about their Apache guest. He simply served the food and joined the conversation, sharing stories of the ranch's better days. After Miguel retired to his quarters, Kate and Nakohe remained at the table, talking long into the night. She learned of his childhood straddling two cultures, his education at the mission school, and his return to his people despite the difficulties it presented. In turn, she told him of her mother's early death, her father's patient teaching as he raised her to take over the ranch someday, and her broken engagement to a man who couldn't understand her connection to the land. "Your father was wise to see your strength," Nakohe said, his voice soft in the lamplight. "Many men would not. He always said I was more stubborn than our most ornery bull," Kate replied with a smile. "I think he meant it as a compliment." Nakohe laughed. a rich, warm sound that Kate realized she had never heard before. It transformed his face, softening the stern lines and making him appear younger, more open. As the night grew later, Kate became increasingly aware of the impropriety of their situation. An unmarried woman alone with a man, particularly an Apache man, would set tongues wagging if anyone knew. Yet she found she didn't care. There was a connection between them that transcended social conventions, something elemental and true. "I should go," Nakohe said finally, seeming to read her thoughts. "We have much to do tomorrow." As he rose to leave, Kate impulsively reached for his hand. "Thank you. Not just for the gold, but for helping me when no one else would." Nakohe looked down at their joined hands, then met her eyes with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You are not what I expected, Kate Wilson." "Nor you," she replied softly. For a moment they stood perfectly still, the air between them charged with unspoken possibilities. Then Nakohe gently squeezed her hand before releasing it. "Tomorrow," he said, "we begin to change your fortune." As Kate watched him ride away into the darkness, she acknowledged the truth she had been avoiding for days. She was falling in love with Nakohe, a man from a different world, a man who should be her enemy according to everything she had been taught. Yet in him she had found understanding, respect, and a shared vision that no one else had ever offered her. Tomorrow they would search for gold, but Kate knew she had already discovered something far more precious. Dawn had barely broken when Nakohe returned, leading Kate to the northern boundary of her property. They rode in comfortable silence through scrubby pine forests and rocky outcroppings that marked the transition from ranchland to the foothills. The air was cooler here, carrying the scent of pine and wild sage. "My people have watched the white men's gold fever for many years," Nakohe said, as they dismounted near a steep ravine. "It changes them, makes them blind to everything but the yellow metal." Kate secured her horse to a pine branch. "I only want enough to save the ranch, nothing more." Nakohe nodded, apparently satisfied with her answer. He led her down a narrow game trail into the ravine, where a small stream trickled over smooth stones. The walls of the ravine rose steeply on either side, creating a secluded corridor that few would stumble upon by accident. "Here," Nakohe said, stopping at a point where the stream bent sharply around a jutting rock face. "My grandfather showed me this place when I was a boy, warning that I should never reveal it to outsiders." He knelt by the stream and began moving rocks aside, digging into the gravel bed with his hands. After several minutes, he held something up that caught the early morning sunlight, a small nugget of gold, no larger than a bean. "It's real," Kate breathed, taking the nugget from his palm. Its weight surprised her, such a small thing yet heavy with possibility. "There is more," Nakohe said. "Not a great deposit like the ones that drove men mad in California, but enough, perhaps, for your needs." For the next several hours, they worked side by side in the stream, panning for gold using a technique Nakohe demonstrated. By midday, they had accumulated a small pouch of nuggets and flakes, not a fortune, but potentially enough to pay off the bank loan. As they sat resting in the shade, sharing jerky and hardtack, Kate studied Nakohe's profile against the blue sky. "Why are you really helping me?" "The truth." Nakohe was silent for a long moment. "When I first saw you examining Crawford's dam, I thought you were just another white settler, taking what was not yours. But I watched you in the days that followed. I saw how you spoke with respect to your Mexican worker, how you cared for your animals, taking water to them before drinking yourself." He turned to face her. "You reminded me that not all settlers see the land as something to be conquered. Some, like you, understand what it means to belong to the land." "And now?" Kate asked, her heart beating faster. Nakohe's dark eyes held hers. "Now I see a woman of great courage and honor, a woman who fights for what she believes in, even when the fight seems hopeless." The honesty in his voice made Kate's throat tighten with emotion. Before she could respond, a sound from above made them both freeze, the unmistakable click of a rifle being cocked. "Well, ain't this cozy?" came Jimmy's voice from the rim of the ravine. He stood with his rifle aimed directly at them, flanked by Hawkins, his arm in a sling from the arrow wound, and two more of Crawford's men. "Jimmy," Kate said, rising slowly, "you don't have to do this." "Sorry, Miss Kate," the young man replied, not meeting her eyes. "Mr. Crawford pays better, and he's promised me a proper job once this is all settled. Settled? Kate repeated. Hawkins spat tobacco juice onto the rocks. Mr. Crawford sends his regards, Miss Wilson. Says to tell you he's upping his offer for your ranch again, seeing as how it's got gold on it now. His cruel smile widened. Course, that's assuming you and your savage friends survive this unfortunate accident we're about to witness. Kate's blood ran cold as she realized their intention. They were miles from the ranch, in a remote location. 2 bodies might not be found for weeks, if ever. Crawford won't get away with murder, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Murder? Hawkins laughed. Way I see it, you were killed by this Apache during an attempted robbery. I'll be the hero who tried to save you but arrived too late. Nakohe had remained perfectly still throughout the exchange, but Kate could sense the tension in his body, like a cougar preparing to spring. Any last words, Miss High and Mighty? Hawkins taunted, raising his rifle. What happened next unfolded with stunning speed. Nakohe flung a handful of wet gravel into Hawkins's face while simultaneously pushing Kate toward the shelter of a boulder. Gunshots echoed through the ravine as Kate scrambled for cover, drawing her own revolver. Through the chaos, she heard the distinctive war cry of Apache warriors, followed by more gunfire from above. Crawford's men were suddenly scrambling for cover themselves, firing wildly at shadows moving along the ridgeline. The Apache! Jimmy cried in panic. Kate seized the moment to fire a shot at Hawkins, catching him in the leg. He went down with a howl of pain as more arrows rained down from above. Within minutes, Crawford's men were in full retreat, dragging the wounded Hawkins with them. Only Jimmy remained, cornered against the ravine wall, his rifle empty. Nakohe stood and whistled a signal. From the ridgeline above, 5 Apache warriors appeared, bows drawn and ready. Your friends abandoned you, Nakohe said to Jimmy, who had dropped his rifle and raised his hands in surrender. They ain't my friends, Jimmy said shakily. Crawford just paid good money. Kate approached the young man, her revolver still trained on him. And was it worth betraying people who treated you like family? Shame crossed Jimmy's face. He threatened my mom, Miss Kate. Said he'd make sure we lost our little house if I didn't help him. Kate felt her anger tempered by understanding. Crawford's methods of control extended throughout the community. Take him, Nakohe instructed 2 of his warriors. Bind him, but do not harm him. As the warriors led Jimmy away, Kate turned to Nakohe. Your people came. I sent word last night that we might need protection, he explained. My chief sent these warriors not just for me, but because he believes you might be an ally worth having. Will they keep our secret? Kate asked, glancing at the gold they had collected. They will, but we must move quickly now. Crawford knows about the gold, and he will return with more men. They gathered their small treasure and mounted their horses, the Apache warriors providing escort as they rode swiftly back toward Kate's ranch. Along the way, Nakohe explained his plan. You must go immediately to the bank with the gold, pay your loan, then ride to the county seat and file a legal complaint against Crawford for the water diversion and the attempted murder. What about you? Kate asked, suddenly fearful for his safety. I will return to my people. Crawford will be looking for me, and it is not safe for me to be seen near your ranch now. The thought of Nakohe leaving sent a pang through Kate's heart. When will I see you again? Nakohe's expression softened. Soon. There is much still to be done. When they reached the edge of her property, the other Apache warriors continued with Jimmy, while Nakohe lingered for a moment with Kate. Be careful, she urged him. Crawford is dangerous, especially now that he knows about the gold. As are you, Kate Wilson, Nakohe replied with a rare smile. A dangerous woman who fights for what is hers. Impulsively, Kate leaned across the space between their horses and kissed him. His lips were warm against hers, and after a moment of surprise, he returned the kiss with an intensity that left her breathless. That was not wise, he said when they parted, though his eyes were warm. Wisdom has little to do with the heart, Kate replied. Come back to me, Nakohe. I will, he promised, when the moon is full again. True to his word, Nakohe returned on the night of the full moon, a month later. Much had changed in that time. Kate had paid off her bank loan with the gold, filed charges against Crawford for the attack, and with the testimony of a remorseful Jimmy, had managed to force a county investigation into Crawford's illegal water diversions. Crawford's empire had begun to crumble as other ranchers, emboldened by Kate's stand, came forward with their own complaints. The county judge, no longer willing to turn a blind eye when public opinion shifted, had ruled that Crawford's dams must be dismantled, restoring the natural flow of water to all properties. The evening of Nakohe's return, Kate waited on her porch, a lantern burning to guide him. When his silhouette appeared on the moonlit path, her heart leapt. "You came back," she said, rising to meet him. "I promised," he replied simply, dismounting and climbing the steps to stand before her. "Crawford's men have been looking for you," Kate warned. "There's a price on your head." "I know, but things are changing. The new Indian agent speaks with more respect to my chief. Some say it is because a certain rancher has the ear of the territorial governor now." Kate smiled. "I may have written a few letters. It seems saving a ranch from a corrupt cattle baron makes people listen to a woman after all." Nakohe took her hands in his. "My chief has asked me to be our tribe's representative to the territorial council, to speak for our interests as changes come." "That's wonderful," Kate said, though she felt a twinge of sadness. "You'll be living at the reservation then?" "Most of the time," Nakohe confirmed. "But I will need a place to stay when council business brings me to town." His eyes held a question. Kate's breath caught as she understood his meaning. "People will talk." "They already do," Nakohe replied. "The question is whether we care." Kate thought of all she had endured, the disapproval, the whispers, the outright hostility from some quarters. None of it mattered compared to what she had found with Nakohe. "I don't care," she said firmly. "Not anymore." Nakohe drew her closer. "There is an old Apache saying, 'Two riding as one can cross any river.'" "Is that a proposal, warrior?" Kate asked, her voice teasing despite the emotion tightening her throat. "It is," Nakohe replied solemnly, "though I know it will not be easy. Our worlds are already joined," Kate interrupted. "Here, on this land." As the full moon bathed the ranch in silver light, Kate and Nakohe sealed their promise with a kiss. There would be challenges ahead, prejudice to face, battles still to fight, but they would face them together, two spirits from different worlds who had found in each other a shared understanding of what truly mattered: honor, courage, and a deep reverence for the land that had brought them together. The Singing River Ranch had been saved, not just by gold, but by an alliance that had transformed into something far more precious. A love that, like the land itself, would endure through drought and storm, season after season, as constant and essential as water flowing to the sea.